All right, thank you all for joining us. My name is Britta Hallberg. I'm with Grafton Regional Development Corporation, and we're very happy to have you with us today. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our speakers and panelists. We have David Boynton and Rita Toth from the Small Business Development Center, Nick Coates, Bristol Town Administrator, Julia Griffin, Hanover Town Manager, Andrew Dorset, Littleton Town Manager, Tracy Hutchins, Executive Director for the Upper Valley Business Alliance, and Nathan Carroll, Executive Director for the Littleton Area Chamber of Commerce, as well as Ann Duncan-Cooley, CEO of Grafton Regional Development Corporation, and helping me today is Haley Crowell, also with GRDC. So thank you all for joining us. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat box down at the bottom of your screen. If you hover over the bottom area, you'll see a chat. You can go ahead and click on that whenever you have a question. We will most likely hold all questions until the end, but we are actively managing that, so feel free to ask whenever you have them. And with that, David Boynton, whenever you're ready.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, so first I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank the GRDC for hosting and our municipal leaders for showing up today. Also our SBDC team, as there's a lot of people working in the background helping us out. So just to give you an idea about myself, I've been 2 years at the SBDC on and off. I have an MBA in organizational and environmental sustainability. I'm an instructor for business with the University System of New Hampshire and professional development, as well as 15 years of small business experience. So like many of our other advisors, we have real on-the-ground practical experience and love to share that with our clients. Rita with me is a business professional with over 15 years experience. She graduated from Harvard University. She's also a small business owner in New Hampshire. And she has a specific interest in business and marketing with a passion for women leadership. So that's a little quick introduction. As far as the SBDC, we mainly provide individualized advising and educational programs. That being said, for small businesses in New Hampshire, that being said, we've been doing a lot more webinars and outreach because we have supported over 3,000 clients in New Hampshire in the past 9 weeks, and that continues to grow. So we are supported by the SBA, the state of New Hampshire, and the University of New Hampshire. Connect with us. We can put a link, or I can share a link where you can connect with an advisor for one-on-one at any time. So for today, we're going to do a quick review of financial assistance, which everyone wants to hear about. And then we're going to go over some general principles for working with your municipality, followed by governor's emergency order, kind of the points of phasing. And then we're going to wrap up with a little bit of question and answer and discussion with the municipal leaders. So quick review of the financial stuff, and I'll keep it relatively short. The PPP, or Paycheck Protection Program, has a lot of detail. People have been receiving this money. It needs to be spent within 8 weeks of your first pay period. And there's a lot of details for forgiveness. I would recommend connecting with an advisor for those details. Another one is the New Hampshire Main Street Recovery Funds. That just came out. There's a quick application online. That is a pre-qualifying application. That's due by May 29th, so a week from tomorrow. And then you will have, excuse me, I'm sorry, a week from Friday. And then you're also, there's gonna be an announcement on June 1st, and then the final application will be due by June 8th. That is a grant program, so no money needing to be paid back. I'd recommend any clients to file that pre-qualification application now. Other ones are the WorkShare and EIDL. If you have questions about those are also very detailed programs that can help with bringing employees back, as well as operating expenses, the disaster loan, as well as WorkShare through unemployment. SBA debt relief, if you have a current 7A loan for your business, 504 loan for your commercial property, line of credit, anything that was supported by that by an SBA loan actually will be paid principal, interest, and fees to the bank for 6 months. And that includes any loans originated and fully dispersed by this September 27th. So that's a program that most people should know about if they don't already. Unemployment, we talk a lot about that with for self-employed is now available, and there's a lot of great qualities for that. There's also some challenges when working with your employees, and we're happy to talk through any of that. Retirement draws and other home equity lines and things like that, we recommend last. We don't want to put people in a worse financial position during these times, but we can talk through that. The BFA is also getting an additional $30 million from that Main Street program, and they are already doing temporary loans, enhancements on lines of credit that require only a 3-year payoff instead of a 1 year, and more coming. So that's New Hampshire Business Finance Authority. We work closely with them as well. Some other things just to work through, just looking through industry grants, especially for restaurants and other folks. But we can talk through any of that financial assistance in depth, either in our webinars that we have additional ones, or on one-on-one advising. Okay, so now right into some of the communication things, just a quick overview. We just want to make sure that people understand that your messaging and your communication of your brand right now is the most important thing to coming out of this strong. And so starting with your existing customers, stepping up your website game by making sure you have a very consistent, updated COVID communication page, response page, making sure you know how to get through the noise of all the email campaigns and social media, and how to deal with conflict management online and in person, adapting your physical location with signage and physical barriers, etc. Getting your employees on board through all of this. A participative management approach has been very successful for a lot of folks. And then working closely to diversify and decentralize your supply chain and working with your vendors to maintain those relationships. One other thing I would mention for communications is any lenders or financial investors or anything like that, communicating to them transparently throughout this process. And then the big one we're talking about today is communication with your municipality and how that can help your business. So one other kind of main topic, so there's kind of financial planning that we're talking about, there's communication and messaging, and then we're talking a lot about operational plans. So updating your employee handbooks, writing a written response plan, adapting it on a weekly, daily basis, however your opening is going and what things you need to change, and really using it as a communication tool as well as a documentation tool, and making sure you're in compliance with CDC, OSHA, your municipality, etc., to be able to have this plan in place and be able to work proactively and deliberately and with intention instead of reactively, which just showing up for the webinar today is showing that you're being proactive. So getting ahead of this game and making the best plan that you can. Okay, so right down to the municipal considerations. One thing that you want to think about is the sidewalk alley usage. We're going to hear from the municipal leaders and what they've been doing to collaborate with their small businesses. Same with parking lot usage. We're thinking about keeping people safe while giving people access. And a couple of things that go along with this is how do you communicate to your employees and your customers, and while setting up good guidelines that are self-managing. ADA compliance is something to work through and have patience with, and open discussions and transparent discussions with any customers, any employees, and your municipality, and how you can remedy or make adjustments as needed. Fire and life safety is the utmost important. So as we talk about jersey barriers and opening up sidewalks and things like that, really listening to the guidelines and the suggestions from the professionals in the municipality and collaborating on that. The liquor enforcement, as far as being able to be more flexible this is an email that you can reach out directly to them with any questions and get those things answered if you do sell alcoholic beverages. So those are just some of the municipal considerations that you're going to hear from the leaders today on. But that is some things that you're going to want to think about and address. Some best practices to review would be proactive communication. So reaching out to your municipality, discussing your needs directly with them, and being transparent with what you're doing. Collaboration with other businesses. So this is streamlining your requests and collaborating with other businesses on communication, as well as what your needs are with the town and how you can work together. But this is a time to keep all boats in the bay afloat for your towns. And I think that's the municipal approach. And that's, as an advisor, that's the best approach we can advise for, is to be collaborative, not competitive during this time. And then, so streamlining those requests to the municipality, as they can be overwhelmed, but they are certainly doing a phenomenal job, as you'll hear today, addressing any issues. And then staying up to date on your own on things that are already out there and accessed, whether it's online forms on the town's website, whether it's newsletters, webinars like this, meetings, et cetera, that you can stay up to date on all the information. As the governor, has up-to-date stay-at-home recommendations and guidelines for your industry and overall specifically, and phasing through your municipality and your organization itself. One thing to just keep in mind that is your best contact may vary depending on your needs for your organization and what you're working through. So trying to find that best person, whether it be the administrative assistant for the fire and safety or assistant town manager, figuring out who's the best person to talk to. There's a lot of great resources usually on your town website for that. Okay, so with the governor's emergency phases, one thing is this is the new and updated website. There was an old one that no longer works. So this is the most up-to-date web link. Review the universal guidelines. There's a lot in there. Check for industry-specific guidelines. Right now, for retail, for campgrounds, for restaurants, there's specific guidelines. Now, just a quick caveat on these guidelines is that they are open for interpretation, and we have seen, we're actually going to be developing a webinar on conflict resolution for customers and employees, because we're seeing a lot of that with the how the guidance is interpreted differently between not just different businesses, but with customers themselves, and how to communicate that. Proactive communication is the best practice there. So check your industry guidelines, interpret them for the safety of your employees and your customers, and then implement them clearly and consistently. And then adapt those policies as things change with phasing, and as you have to change your infrastructure or respond to complications. So those are some best practices for understanding the phasing of this as we go forward. So just to wrap it up, we have lots more webinars from the SBDC that can really help you with the planning of all of this, and we have lots more coming on PP forgiveness and the conflict resolution, like I mentioned. So I think we're going to open it up, Britta, to other folks. Thank you so much for listening. And let us know again in the chat if you have any specific questions. We'd be happy to take scenario-based questions as well.
Great. Thanks so much, David. So we're going to start off with talking with one of our panelists, Nick Coates, Bristol Town Administrator. Nick's going to talk a little bit about the efforts that Bristol is making to help the small businesses in Bristol navigate through these new regulations. So Nick, whenever you're ready.
Great. Well, thanks for your time, everybody. I appreciate it. It's great to listen in on a lot of things. I know I've learned a lot just listening to David. So I just wanted to take a few minutes and just talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing in Bristol. And they're not unique by any stretch of the imagination. So I apologize to the folks that come after me. I may be saying things that you are already planning on saying. I guess one of the things that I would want to say from the get-go is that we are a lake community, and so we're having a real discussion about how do we sort of meet the guidelines while at the same time sort of finding that balancing act of keeping our community safe but open at the same time. So this kind of whole process is all new to us and trying to figure out how to find that right balance. So what I say now may not necessarily be true in a couple of weeks, but anyway, I think the things that's most important is that a lot of what we're learning is and what we're doing is really within the ethos as an organization already. So we really try to be forward thinking. We really try to troubleshoot whenever possible, and we really try to be flexible whenever possible. And I'm a former planner, and the staff that I've worked with on this, our land use folks, that's really what we try to instill is flexibility, troubleshooting, and forward thinking. And so that's the guiding star, so to speak. We all started out really with setting up a volunteer group in the community for people who wanted to contribute to the community. We're looking for things to do. So we started a volunteer group, and they've started to call businesses, and they've really just tried to be a listening ear on, like, what do you need? How are you guys doing? What can the town do to help? How can we get out of the way if we're in the way? And that really has kind of guided us a lot in just kind of how we move forward. What that led to was as we were learning more about what the businesses were needing, the guidance from the Stay at Home 2.0 came out. And so we were trying to figure out how do we allow this outdoor seating in a way that is going to be really super simple, but at the same time be able to make sure that we have enough information. What we did is we established a temporary authorization where we really tried hard to not call it a permit. So we're calling it a temporary authorization, and it's a one-page document where we're just asking businesses to provide what their outdoor seating plan is, just a sketch or a picture, and then for use on their parking lot or in their space or public space, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute. So we're just trying to collect that information, and then most importantly, just help them navigate it. So, we didn't want to go the site plan route because that takes a little bit longer. We really just wanted to focus on how can we help in the next 24 to 48 hours to get this approved for you. So that was kind of step one, was this temporary authorization for outdoor seating. And we've got pretty much all of our restaurants on board now. I think we've got about 10 restaurants that have signed up to do outdoor seating, which is pretty awesome. This morning, we went out, our key staff, our land use manager, our fire chief, police chief, and others, and myself went out and we looked at 2 locations for making public space available for 2 restaurants in our downtown that don't have any space available. And so what we kind of came to a resolution on with one of them is that we're going to allow them to use some green space in the square for seating. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to actually reduce about 4 parking spaces, and we're going to put some Jersey barriers up and planters. And we're going to let the microbrewery set up tables on there and be able to let people carry their drinks out to that in a cordoned area. We'll lose a couple parking spaces, but we think the benefit there is that it's really going to be help that business kind of get up off their feet. And that's really been our focus, is how do we get these guys up and running quickly, effectively, so that they can get cash flow going and kind of be ready for when those tourists come, because people are starting to come already. And I think that the restaurants have been very appreciative of that, of us being sort of very forward thinking and troubleshooting. Again, we reached out to those folks rather than waiting for them to come to us. So that's a couple things. One other thing that we've done that we're talking about, we haven't pulled the trigger on yet, is that the state is making stimulus dollars available to us, to each municipality. We received about $74,000, and what we're looking to do potentially is carve out some of those dollars to do micro grants to some of the businesses to handle COVID-related expenses. So in particular, the restaurants, how can the restaurants use those dollars effectively? And some of the things we're talking about is, can we give them $1,000 for them to be able to rent a couple tents or to buy some table space? We haven't pulled the trigger on that yet, but we're still working through it. And that's one thing that we're looking at. And then just a couple other things related to not related to space is that we've been doing a lot of webinars on our own with business owners to try and help others navigate the process of all the different funding options. We are going to be doing a webinar next week with some banking folks to talk a little bit more about how to be forward thinking in your and how to be deliberate about how you're going to go navigate this process. And then I guess really the last thing I'll say that we're doing is we're really, I think as David touched upon, is we're really trying to focus on constant communication. Really just try to push out as much information as possible so that businesses can really know where things stand rather than them guessing, because that's what businesses need. They need constant and they need steady, and that's what we're really trying to do. So we're pushing a lot of information out through video, through Facebook, through a website, through email, phone calls, what have you, just so that people know exactly where things stands at all time and they're not guessing. So I just threw a lot out there and I kind of did a high level. I'll stop there. Happy to answer any questions, I guess, at the end or for any clarifications or other ideas.
Great, thanks so much, Nick. All right, and now on to Julia Griffin, who is the Hanover Town Manager. Julia, take it away.
Thanks, Britta. So Nick has really done a great job of sort of giving a pretty complete overview of the opportunities that are available to municipalities to try and expedite the ability of restaurants to get outdoors, and retailers as well, quite frankly. You know, in Hanover, we're a fairly regulated community in terms of strict zoning enforcement and a very complex sort of site plan review process. And we also have an ordinance in place that doesn't allow alcohol or consumption of alcohol on public property. And we decided, look, it's a state of emergency. We're simply gonna waive all of our regulatory procedures. We know our downtown restaurants, they're like a lot of our restaurants, but particularly in a college town where the students are gone and may well be for the foreseeable future. It's sort of a double whammy right now. And so we acknowledged that we needed to just set aside our former regulatory ways and embrace moving fast, which is exactly what we did. We purchased some Jersey barriers, which we're charging off to another project that we're doing later this year. So, and our Public Works Department is placing them. We're cannibalizing almost all of our public parking spaces on Main Street, which is easier to do right now because we don't have a huge amount of parking demand in downtown Hanover. We're doing tent inspections, but not requiring tent permits for restaurants that are arranging to put up tents. We've just put out all our hanging flower baskets, and we're putting out some whiskey barrels with flowers in addition to what the restaurants are doing to dress up Main Street. Our guys came in and did street sweeping over the weekend to get them all cleaned up for parking spaces being taken up by restaurant seating. All we're requiring of a restaurant or a retailer is just give us a copy of your certificate of insurance, and here, sign this one-page license agreement that Primex, our property and liability insurer, prefers that we have in place. I got the select board to grant me blanket authorization to execute all licenses for use of public property. And you should see Main Street now. We've got tables all over the place. We've done a lot of measuring with the restaurant owners, helping us to make sure that they know why we've got to maintain adequate clearance for ADA and also social distancing. And so they've all been out there with our building inspectors and our fire chief and our health officer doing the measurements so that they sort of appreciate what we're juggling and trying to make sure everybody has access. And on a day like today, I just went out half an hour to pick up my takeout sandwich, and we've got people sitting in outdoor spaces all up and down Main Street, well distanced, mostly masked, unless they're eating, but enjoying this gorgeous weather. And for the first time in 2 months, it feels like there's life in town. So I guess my message to the business owners that are on the call or to other municipal officials is, boy, this is a time to just really let go of those regs and take a little bit of a flyer in a way that we're not always comfortable in taking, because I think in the long run, it builds huge goodwill, and it also is going to bring life back to our communities over the summer.
Great. Thank you so much, Julia. That was a lot of great stuff happening over there. All right, Andrew Dorset, who I think I missed introducing. Andrew is the town manager for Littleton. And Andrew, whenever you are ready.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, just like to echo a lot of what Nick covered and Julia. You guys are both doing a great job. We've been, really using our website and made a website COVID-specific page, and finally got a Facebook page and started pushing out some information that way. One thing in Littleton, we're really lightly staffed, but Nathan's here, Nathan Carroll from our chamber, and Nathan really has an effective conduit right to pretty much all the businesses in town. And so we have access to him, and he's been getting out information in real time to help our local businesses. An interesting thing about Littleton versus maybe Hanover is it's a little bit like the Wild West as far as regulations go. So businesses already have quite a bit of leeway in doing some creative things. We are working with businesses right now to make sure that our public spaces have restrooms, and we have no public restrooms in Littleton, and the public usually use private restaurants or buildings. And since they don't have access to those, we're looking at the critical spots so that the public can use our picnic tables and green spaces. And we're also working with we have a group, Main Street Inc. and the Chamber, to look at a process similar to Bristol and Hanover to allow parking spaces or sidewalks to be used for outdoor seating. That's kind of the summation of what we're doing. We also have our health officer and fire chief are basically like a rapid deployment team to go out and take care of any guidance that needs to be done for local businesses, and going in and trying to help them just audit their procedures too, to make sure that they're all set. So that's pretty much what we're doing right now. The board, my select board, is really open also to just trying to find any ways that we can help support businesses. And I'd encourage any business to, like the others were saying, reach out to your municipality and let us know what you need.
Great, thank you, Andrew. And next is David Brooks, who is the Director of Planning and Zoning for Lebanon. And David, off to you.
Thanks very much, Britta. I can, again, similarly echo what Julia and Nick have mentioned, as well as Andrew up in Littleton. In Lebanon, we have tried to simplify this process as much as possible, understanding that this is a temporary emergency situation. We have, like Nick in Bristol, we've basically bypassed the site plan review process for these outdoor seating areas. We've asked for just the basic application, building and zoning application, the lowest fee we can charge, and we're just asking for a sketch so that we don't create a problem where there's not one now. Many of our restaurants have some amount of outdoor seating, whether it's a small deck or patio, and the city has regularly, over the last half a dozen years at least, worked with a couple of our downtown restaurants to create a licensing agreement where they can set out tables on our pedestrian mall. So for this year in downtown, the council and the administration worked with those two restaurants, and we ultimately ended up blocking off sort of a segregated parking space, set of parking spaces right in front of our temporary city hall, where One of the restaurants has set up a large tent, has maybe a dozen tables under that. They've got some other seating that is not covered. It's just bar top type tables with an umbrella. And then they still have the area that they normally occupy on the pedestrian mall. For the other restaurant, we actually closed off a street in full. It's Court Street, for anybody who knows downtown Lebanon. It's a little connector between the park streets around Colburn Park and the municipal parking behind City Hall. So we closed that off, both lanes. We talked about looking at one lane or the other, but we decided to close off both. We've set up signage elsewhere around downtown to help navigate people from that back parking lot to get back to the street network. The second restaurant has set up again a very large tent in that area, occupying the entire street for about it's maybe 150 feet long. It's a pretty big tent. But Monday night, coming out of City Hall, walking right through these areas, it seemed like almost every outdoor seat was occupied because of the good weather and the first real opportunity to get out and have a meal out and not just be getting takeout or delivery. So that's been great. Again, we've had half a dozen or more other restaurants in and around the city request permission to set up tables in their parking lots or in a lawn area. And we've been working with them, with our fire department and building and zoning folks, just to make it as simple as possible. Just a single form. Obviously, the tent guidelines from the state apply. So if there's a tent, there's an extra form. If there's power, some of these projects involve extending power for lights or heat or what have you. So we take an extra form for that. But otherwise, if they're not extending power and if they're not setting up a tent, it's a very, very simple process. And we're trying to turn them around in 24 to 48 hours, knowing that it's a quick turnaround. It's a temporary situation. And as Julia said, we're doing what we can to help them, and we'll figure out the zoning and the planning aspects if this continues much into the fall. We don't anticipate these to go beyond the good weather in the fall in any event. So I think we're doing maybe a 6-month approval, or we may be putting an outside time on them or not. But so it's been good. It's been well received. The council's been on board. The city manager's been on board. And the restaurants, the downtown restaurants, have been extremely appreciative. So it's been good so far.
Great, thanks, David. All right, next we have 2 executive directors, Nathan Carroll from Littleton Area Chamber of Commerce and Tracy Hutchins from the Upper Valley Business Alliance. If you two could take a couple minutes and just talk about what you're hearing directly from the small businesses and how your organizations are helping them.
Sure. So luckily, Tracy and I work pretty closely together, even though we're sort of in separate spaces. We both serve on the board of the New Hampshire Chamber Execs Association, which has really been a tool for bringing chambers together in the vein of communicating and collaborating and bringing sort of shared asks to things. And so I've never seen so much collaboration in my life and information sharing. It's been really great, which I'm hoping trickles down to businesses in communities and then, of course, to municipalities as well. We here in Littleton area have, from the very beginning, we just sort of, as I say, figuratively flung our doors open because they're locked, and really have included our entire community and all of our communications. So anybody I have an email address for gets our member newsletter. Everything goes out on Facebook. We're just really, again, making sure that we're sharing as much as we can with everyone, and also not make it overwhelming because there's so much information out there. As Nick said, some things change almost daily. we have really just been focusing at this point on getting information out about the financial resources, the business assistance resources as well, and have had a lot of success with that. We've been doing a number of webinars with employment security, with the SBA, and looking now, into different industries and connecting with those members to get updates as well. We're running a Zoom resource hour almost every Tuesday in the morning. I send out a little note the evening before, and have had from 5 to a dozen people that just pop in for a few minutes and ask a question or two, or stick around for the hour, and we kind of go through the new news of the week, as it were, for resources and information, and really, again, just wanting to make sure that everybody has the information they need, even community members and residents, and going outside of that business realm that we're so focused on often. And we, in the very beginning of this, set up a food drive, and we've got a few food pantries in Littleton and some other outlets, including the senior center that we were supporting, and getting other people to support as well. We, as a chamber, are promoting some of the state, some campaigns, I should say, that started at the state level with the Department of Travel and Tourism, like Takeout Tuesday, Small Business Saturday. We're promoting those on our own as well, and sort of have, through a chamber colleague that Tracy and I have added Gift Card Wednesday to that mix. And so there's a number of those pieces that we're doing, and just trying to cover all of our bases, make sure that our COVID-19 page on our website is up to date, that we have a separate list through our directory that are including all of our open businesses, whether they're open for curbside or open fully, they're on that list. So folks can just click a button and just see the list, and then kind of learn more from there. So it's all about awareness and information sharing, and just trying to make sure that anyone that has a need has it either met, or we can send them to the right folks to get that need met. And that's really what our focus is at this point, and we're going to continue doing. We're now thinking about the recovery efforts, and have just started to put a group together, including chamber, the Central New Hampshire Chamber, and really all the way up to the border, including Colebrook and Gorham Berlin and all of that, to create basically an economic recovery committee. And again, so we're not having separate asks and all that. So we're utilizing everyone's networks. We're going to build that group from just chamber execs to a few other stakeholders and communities as well, and just work through issues as they come, and be able to help the entire region, but which, of course, as many of you know, is very different than the southern part of the state. But we're, all those communities are different, but the region itself is. So we figured, let's not do this all separately. Let's get together and do this. And we're going to start having some formal meetings soon in this same format, and sharing information, and kind of finding a mission and a vision for that group as the needs come up. So that's the focus from Littleton.
And Nathan covered quite a bit of territory. And so in terms of what we're doing at the Upper Valley Business Alliance, which our area covers Hanover, Lebanon, and several of the towns over here on the Connecticut River border, we're doing a lot of the same things, absolutely pushing out messaging, working with our businesses, helping them to access the various federal and state funding programs as they become available, trying to make sure that our businesses know what's there and ready for them, sending them to the Small Business Development Center and the SBA as appropriate. So doing a lot of that type of work. We are working closely with our municipalities. David, Brooks, Julia are both part of my team here with the chamber. And I have to say, we have a great relationship with our municipalities. In fact, I just did a ribbon cutting, believe it or not, for a restaurant that opened last week this morning. Talk about guts, in Enfield. Obviously, it was planned before the pandemic hit, but I reached out to their town administrator, and with masks and gloves on, we showed up and did a ribbon cutting this morning to help get that restaurant launched. Very excited for that. And again, I would urge any of the businesses who are on here listening, if you don't know who to reach out to in terms of your local municipality, or even some of these other folks, reach out to your local chamber, because we do have great relationships. And if you're not sure who to call, we probably know who, and we can at least get you in the right direction. And like Nathan said, right now, we are typically a membership organization, but we've just taken all of those barriers down. We are working with all of our businesses, new, old businesses. We're here to try to support you and help you. So that's what's happening here on the Riverside.
Great. Thank you both, Tracy and Nathan. All right, so we've reached our Q&A portion of the program. So don't forget, their chat function is down at the bottom. Feel free to send us along your questions. We'll read them off. In the meantime, there was a bit of conversation going on surrounding fitness and yoga, and how are the towns helping wellness and health businesses to reopen, because that's definitely a big one that has a lot of obstacles to overcome. So I think Julia and Nick, you both were able to respond to that. If you could speak a little bit more on it.
Yeah, in Hanover, we have a yoga studio that's very popular. And they asked if they could use an immediately adjacent pocket park that is public for their yoga classes. And it was actually Tracy who put the owner in touch with us, and we said yes to our park, but also connected them with a property owner right across the street that has a much better front lawn. It's a fraternity house that's actually closed because the campus is closed, and they've spiffed up the front lawn while the students are away, and it's got 3 times the square footage of our little pocket park. So I believe that the yoga studio owner is now talking with that alumni board to see if they might hold yoga classes. It's kind of poetic to have yoga classes on the front yard of a fraternity. Doesn't, it lends a little bit of air of civilization to what is otherwise sort of a chaotic place when students are here. And then we have not been contacted by any other fitness studios, but I know that Lebanon had a couple that were trying to conduct court classes out in their parking lots. And so David may want to address that the whole fitness issue has been a little bit controversial in terms of gyms. Are they open? Are they not? Can they hold classes? Can they not? And we've basically said to our yoga studio owner, for example, well, let's wait to be sure we're all clear about state guidance, but when and if that switch is flipped on, our park is your park. Just post your class schedule so that other park wanderers know when to expect a dozen or so people with yoga mats working out on the lawn. So.
David, I don't know if you want to go. I've got a few things, but if you want to say anything.
Yeah, I don't know how much. I don't know much about the yoga or the fitness areas. The ones that have contacted, the only situations I'm aware of are, as Julia just mentioned, some gyms that are open and that are trying to be deemed essential services. I don't really know how that's going, but as soon as the switch is flipped that allows them to open, we'll absolutely be ready to work with them to whatever degree they need us to.
We have an independently owned gym in town. It's actually owned by one of our fire captains, and he opened it 6 months before this all happened with his sister, and it was a long time coming. It was been talked about for about 10 years, and finally kind of came to fruition. So their business owner has been very good with them and taking care of them. They're closed right now, but they are actually lending out their weights and their equipment to people. And so they're doing a great job there. And then also they've been doing a lot of Zoom type classes, probably like many gyms. And then what we're doing as a town is we're allowing fitness instructors, yoga instructors to use our beaches and to use our parks. In fact, I think this morning there was a group of about 15 or so people out in the park. And so they separated into groups of 2 so they could keep their distancing. And it's great. I mean, you know, we had that before this all happened, where parks and beaches were allowed to be used, and we still are doing that. So, you know, I think the governor has kind of been very clear that people need to get outside and exercise, and you know, we're really trying to let people do that too, because as you all know, everybody's kind of pent up right now and pretty frustrated. So we're trying to allow people to get out safely and burn off that negative energy as much as possible.
Great, thank you all for that. I haven't seen any more questions come through, so I'll just reiterate, there is that little chat function down at the bottom. In the meantime, I just want to take a couple of minutes and thank everyone, all of our panelists, for taking the time out of their schedules today. Obviously, everyone's so busy, and this, I think, was incredibly helpful. Also to David and Rita, who have put together so many of these wonderful webinars and have been so willing to work with their different clients and us to get the information out there. If anybody does have any questions, of course, feel free to reach out to GRDC. Our email is connect@graftonrdc.org, and we're going to throw that in the chat. Or you can also reach out to either David or Rita at the SBDC if you need some one-on-one advising. Their emails, which we will also put in the chat, is david.boynton at unh.edu and rita.toth at unh.edu. All 3 of those are now in the chat. So with that, I don't see any more questions coming through. You can always reach any of us at those email addresses, and we hope you'll stay in touch. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.